tonight. Rory, a very good evening to you. Thank you for being with us. So let's begin with how you got your start in the industry.
Well, like so often happens, it really was a matter of being in the right place at the right time. So I was a police officer, and even today the protection officers, we prefer that term to the term bodyguard, so because it's a profession. So the protection officers that protect and keep safe our president and our leaders are all police officers, men and women, and they're all police officers. So I was a cop at the time that then State President F.W. de Klerk made those historic announcements in 1990. And I had undergone a VIP protection course in the police, and I was asked as a very young lieutenant at the time to start up the police VIP protection unit in Johannesburg. And if you fast forward that, if you fast forward that movie 4 years to 1994, when Madiba is released and he is inaugurated and becomes our first democratic president, I now had a president with both a home and an office in Joburg, where I was the commander. And it didn't therefore take very long after the Presidential Protection Unit as it exists today was established for the commander to phone me up and say, look, Rory, one of the team leaders is going to study in Canada. He's emigrating. We need to replace a team leader. Would you consider applying? Because you know the president knows you, you know the teams, and they know you. So it would have been an easy transition. And I said, well, give me 24 hours to discuss it with my wife, and we agreed that we do that. So that's in a nutshell what happened.
And all of this, as you are moving on now to become President Nelson Mandela's protector, if we can use that word, was coming at a time of great distrust, especially between people who had served in any capacity under the government during the apartheid years and now the incoming administration. How did you begin to build that trust with Mandela, given that that is such a key element in that relationship between protector and the person?
Certainly, and it wasn't just the relationship with the president that I had to build, it was also the relationship with the men and women that reported to me that I had to build. And I just took a very firm decision on day one that I would operate purely from a basis of fairness. Whatever is right, irrespective of who it's right or wrong for or how it's perceived or seen, I'm going to judge any decision, any question that I'm faced with, any situation where I need to make a decision as the team leader. I'm going to make it on what is fair and what is right. And that's what I did. And, you know, I think that if you do that and you do that consistently, people see it. So I have always said I never presumed to speak for the president, but I believe that he probably saw that that was the way that I operated. I can only hope, but I can tell you that the men and women underneath me, under my command, saw that, and they came to respect that, and we came to grow as a unit. You know, you call yourself a presidential protection unit, and that third word in the name, the unit, actually does denote unity, and there was no unity in the beginning, as you correctly said in your introduction. And we had to build that, and the only way you build it is time. I cannot meet you today and trust you tomorrow. You need time to work together and hurt together and sweat together and work together before you understand that, you know what, that guy over there has the same problems that I have, even though he comes from a very different background. His kids also get sick.
Okay.
His wife also gets grumpy when we work late. And you just find that we're all actually the same. And we had the most important task one of the most important tasks in the New South Africa. We had to keep the most famous person on this planet alive. It's a massive responsibility.
Like you said earlier, you came through the ranks of being a police officer, and it was through that route that you went on then to become part of the Presidential Protection Unit. But
yes,
in present-day South Africa, what other alternatives are there for a person who's interested in becoming a protection officer?
Well, interestingly enough, there are many. There are many, the private security industry in South Africa is massive. It's huge. It's more than double the size of the police service as it is. There are more than twice the number of cops in serving in the private security industry. And okay, largely that is guarding, traditional guarding as you and I know it, either of factories or of offices or of whatever. But at the top end of that industry is a whole profession that deals with executive protection or personal protection or VIP protection, whatever it is. And we've got excellent people there. And they traditionally, in the main, would come from former police units or even former military units. But there is as big a number in the private security industry that has neither police nor military experience, that are just passionate about their profession of being the best protection officers that they could be, and they're all trained in the private industry, and they're great.
So where do they go in the private industry, Rory? Are there colleges that one can go to?
No, not colleges as much as courses that are run. And remember that the courses have to be registered with the respective qualification, South African Qualification Authority. They have to comply with certain unit standards and curricula set by the private security industry. So it's not just a fly-by-night, willy-nilly, two men in the garage with the bucky around the corner kind of operation. You've got to have your curriculum registered. You've got to study. You've got to pass exams. You've got to show competence in the use of firearms, competence in the way that you drive, a whole range of competencies. And actually, it's a very interesting and a very challenging profession. It can be boring. There's a lot of routine. If you have a principal or a boss who doesn't deviate much from the standard routine day to day, week in, week out, then it can be a little boring. But by and large, there are new challenges and new things to face and to think about and to overcome every day.
Just very briefly then, Rory, because we are almost out of time. We are out of time, in fact. But from what I would have noticed just watching ministers and other prominent persons come through our doors here at ENCA and observing their protection officers, it would appear that personally one has to have a certain temperament in order to succeed at the job. Am I right?
You are right. Yes, you do need a certain temperament, and yet the industry would have a place for all kinds of personalities. But the temperament that you're looking for is somebody who is calm under pressure, somebody who thinks ahead. The last thing you want to do in our job, other than what the movies will try and tell you, the last thing that you want to do is draw a firearm. If you need to draw your firearm, you haven't done your job, and you haven't done what you should have done 2-3 steps back when you should have seen and recognized the danger that you need to move your principal away from. Those are the kinds of things. So you need people that anticipate well, that are calm, that can make logical decisions, that can exercise authority, and that have a high degree of personal integrity, that are honest, and that are self-motivated, because much of this work is one person working on his or her own with one principle. And therefore you need to be a self-starter. You need to have punctuality. You can't be late. All of those aspects are things that we look at.
Fantastic. Rory Steyn, thank you so much for being on Nightline tonight. Rory speaking to us there via Skype.